So, good evening, everyone. So, today I will be introducing one of the most profound and influential works of modern literature, which is the Duino Elegies by Rainer Maria Rilke. Uh, I have already sent you the hard copy of I have already sent you the soft copy of the poems, and as for this video record lecture, I shall do the introduction only. So, the Duino Elegies is a collection of 10 philosophical lyric poems by Rilke, Rainer Maria Rilke. He's an Austrian poet and novelist. So, these philosophical poems were composed over a period of 10 years. That means from 1912 to 1922 at Duino Castle. You know what a castle is, right? At Duino Castle near Trieste, overlooking the sea. Trieste is a city in Italy, which is at the coastal areas of Italy, and this city is overlooking the sea. So it is the seaside, a seaside city. And as you can see, the title of the elegies comes from the Duino Castle, located near Trieste in Italy. So, according to Rilke, the inspiration for the elegy came to him while he was walking along the cliffs near the castle and listening to the sound of the wind and the sea. So, the location, the castle, and the location had a lot to do with the composition of these elegies. Duino Elegies. So Duino is the name of a castle where he was staying, and Trieste is a place in Italy, and he was going there as a he was there as a guest, but he's not an Italian, he's an Austrian poet. So Rilke, who lived from 1875 to 1926, is widely regarded as one of the greatest modernist poets. Yeah, and his writings explore some of the deepest questions of human existence, including love, death, spirituality, art, loneliness, the search for meaning in life. So his poems are very deep, and they deal with something that has to do with the deeper questions. So, which means, like, unlike poets or unlike writers who discussed simply describe events, Rilke invites his readers to reflect on the inner lives and on what it means to be human. So his poems are very deep and philosophical, and it questions bigger questions in life. Now let us come to the concept of elegy. What is an elegy? We know that there are different forms of poetry, right? Which you all have studied even from your first semester. We have sonnet, we have ode, we have epic, and elegy is also one of them, right? So we have dramatic monologue, we have so many others: epic, sonnet, ode, dramatic monologue, and a lot of them. Elegy is also one form of poetry. So what kind of poetry is an elegy? Traditionally speaking, an elegy is a poem of mourning, sorrow, or lamentation, often written for someone who has died. So such poems usually end with some form of consolation or acceptance on the death. Okay, traditionally. So be very clear when I add the word traditionally. Now, related forms of elegy is also dirge, which is a funeral song, and a threnody, which is a formal lament for the dead. Okay. However, in modern literature, traditionally it is a poem of mourning or lament or sorrow for the dead, right? But now in modern literature, elegies are not confined or limited to mourning of a person's death. Okay, so in modernist literature, an elegy can also lament many kind of loss, such as the loss of innocence, the passing of youth, lost love, spiritual emptiness, human suffering, and alienation. Uh, for example, a person may feel sorrow not because someone has died, but because they have lost faith or purpose or a sense of belonging, right? Such feelings can also become the subject of an elegy. So, know the concept here that elegy is not confined to death alone in modern concept, okay, in modern literature. So, it can lament many kinds of loss, and these are the examples. Now, coming to why do we know elegies are called elegies? See, the poems are not primarily mourning a dead person. This brings us a very important question. Why do you know elegies are called elegies? These poems are not mourning a dead person or a particular individual. Rilke is not mourning the death of a particular individual. He instead, he mm, he laments deeper human and spiritual losses, like humanity's separation from the divine, the loss of spirituality, human mortality and transience, and the loneliness of modern existence. In other words, the Duino Elegies mourn the condition of modern humanity, okay, modern humanity, which we will learn all these when we proceed to the elegy one by one. All right, but the catch is that these elegies are not mourning the death of a person, but they are mourning the Rilke is lamenting deeper human and spiritual losses. So the poems are very deep and they are not easy. That brings us to the next part of the introduction. So, historical backdrop of the poem. Okay, we know we have discussed World War I and the crisis of modern man. So to understand the poems better, we must also understand the historical period in which these Duino elegies were written. Okay, the Duino elegies were written during and after World War I. World War I lasted from 1914 to 1918. So we have known and learned that the war was one of the most devastating events in human history. So more than 16 million people died, cities were destroyed, modern technology, which many people had believed would improve life, was instead used for industrialized killing, large-scale destruction. Right, the invention of the dynamite and all that. Before the 20th century, scientific improvements have begun in 19th century, 18th century. The steam engine, the aeroplane, the dynamite, and all that. People thought that human beings were progressing to we're heading in advancement. But what happened is that modern technology, which many people had believed, was instead used for large-scale destruction. Okay, and then as a result, many people feel that the world they knew had collapsed. Right, and another going further, a very important point is that what did the war do apart from all this? The war caused people to lose confidence or to lose their faith in many traditional institutions like the church, the state, the school, science and progress, traditional moral values. Because before the war, many people believed that humanity was steadily moving toward a better future, right? But after witnessing mass destruction and suffering, that confidence was deeply shaken. So people began asking, what is the use of the church? What is the use of the state? What is the use of the schools if humans are to kill one another like this? If we are to destruct one another like this? The church told us, the church teaches us to believe in humanity. The state, the schools taught us moral values. But what has those learnings resulted to? Right, so because of the mass destruction and because of the widespread horrific killings and all that, number of killings and all that, people started questioning the church, the state, the schools, the science and progress. Are they doing any good? Are these institutions doing any good? Do we still have to believe in them? Okay, so many lose faith in traditional institutions like all this. Right, so As faith in traditional institutions like the church, the state, the schools decline, a new sense of anxiety emerged. Many people experience a new sense because they started losing faith in church, state, schools. They experience spiritual emptiness, loneliness and alienation, fear and uncertainty, and a feeling of disconnection from God, nature, and other people. Okay, so even today, many people experience similar feelings despite living in a technologically advanced world, right? That's why Rilke's poetry will continue to feel very relevant even to modern readers. Okay, so the loss of faith in all this resulted to a kind of modern anxiety, and the modern anxiety resulted in existential questions like, why are we here? How should we live? Can life have meaning in suffering? How do we face the uncertainty? As a result of the crisis, people begin asking these type of profound questions. Okay, these are not merely philosophical questions, uh, but they are questions that almost every human being encounters at some point in life. Right. Now let's see what is Rilke's response. Okay, so how does Rilke respond to all these concerns in his poems? In Duino Elegies, in the collection of 10 elegies, Rilke does not offer simple answers. Instead, what did he do? He explores love, mortality, beauty, spirituality, art, and the possibility of spiritual transformation through art. Right. For Rilke, true growth often comes through confronting pain, loss, and uncertainty rather than avoiding them. So we will understand those when we read the elegy one by one. But for now, you have to know that the World War I was uh, the backdrop of the composition of these elegies. Okay, so the Duino Elegies are more than a collection of poems. They are very profound and deep meditations on the human life and human condition, written after the world was shattered by World War I. Right, and these poems, they are like I have said, they are very meaningful, and we will see how, as we move through the individual elegies, we will see how Rilke transform experiences of loneliness, suffering, and mortality into opportunities for spiritual transformation, opportunities for artistic vision. Okay, so this is the introduction I can give for the Duino Elegies. And then we will see that there are many symbols and motifs used in the Duino Elegies. Okay, so let us just see what is a symbol. A symbol is a person, place, object, image, or event that represents something beyond its literal meaning. It points to deeper, often abstract or spiritual ideas. A rose is a flower. In the literally, a rose means a flower. But in literature, it can also symbolize beauty, love, or the transience of life. Symbols are those which have meaning apart from its own literal meaning. Okay, so Rilke will use a lot of symbols, and a motif is, like you say, a recurring, something that occurs again and again, image, idea, situation, word, or pattern that appears throughout the work. The repeated presence of death, journeys, or childhood in the work constitutes a motif. So we will have symbols and motif, an extensive usage of symbols and motif in the Duino Elegies, and we will see how they are used and what meanings do they have when we learn the poem one by one. Okay, so that's it for today. This is the introduction, backdrop introduction on the elegies, the name, the poet, what is an elegy, then why do you know elegies are called elegies, what is the historical backdrop of the poem. That much I can give you for today, and I shall do the poems in the next Zoom class or video recording. Thank you.